Long ago, before the mountains of East Africa knew the weight of a human shadow, the sky and the earth were not separate realms but lived in a fragile, golden embrace. In this era of beginnings, Neiterkob, the benevolent god of the Maasai, looked down from the high celestial pastures with eyes that mirrored the burning sun and the cooling moon. He was not a god of lightning or of wrath, but a guardian of life, a shepherd who tended to the invisible threads that bound every living creature to the soil. Below him stretched the vast savanna, a canvas of amber grass and acacia trees that whispered secrets to the wind. Yet it felt strangely incomplete in its silent majesty. Neiterkob watched the first people wandering through the dust, their hands empty and their bellies often echoing with the hollow sound of hunger. They were a resilient folk, but they lacked the one thing that would tie them forever to the heartbeat of the land, a companion that could sustain them through the seasons of drought. Deep within the celestial chambers, Neiterkob possessed a secret wealth, a gift that was neither gold nor silver, but something that breathed and moved with a rhythmic grace. These were the first cattle, creatures with hides the color of the sunset and horns that curved like the new moon, grazing upon the stars of the upper world. Neiterkob knew that for his people to thrive, the divide between the heavens and the earth had to be bridged not by a wall, but by a ladder of faith and leather. He summoned the elders of the celestial realm to discuss the fate of the world below, his voice sounding like the low rumble of a distant rainstorm as it rolls across the plains. The children of the earth are weary, Neiterkob declared. They walk the plains, but they do not yet rule them with the dignity they deserve, for they have no anchor to the soil. He decided that he would send a portion of his heavenly herd down to the world, but such a gift could not simply be dropped from the clouds without a vessel to carry its weight. Thus, Neiterkob took a long strip of raw hide, stretching it from the very edge of the sky down to the red soil of the Great Rift Valley, creating a shimmering path. This leather ribbon became the first umbilical cord between the divine and the mortal, a physical manifestation of his love for the creatures that walked in the dust below. As the first cow stepped onto the leather path, the sky trembled, and the wind began to sing a song of arrival that the birds would mimic for thousands of generations to come. One by one, the cattle began their slow descent, their hooves clicking against the hide like rhythmic drums announcing a change in the very destiny of the world's landscape. On the ground, a young man named Nkai looked up, shielding his eyes from the brilliance of the descending light that pierced through the morning mist of the valley. He was a simple gatherer, known for his infinite patience and his rare ability to listen to the silence of the stones, and Neiterkob had chosen him for this specific reason. Do not fear the thunder of the hooves, a voice whispered directly into Nkai's heart, for this is the pulse of your future, the unseen gift of the Benevolent One. Nkai stood his ground as the first beast touched the earth, its warm breath smelling of sweet celestial herbs, ancient rains, and the promise of a life no longer defined by scarcity. The animal did not run in fear, but looked at him with large, liquid eyes that held the wisdom of the stars. Recognizing him immediately as its new guardian on this earthly plane, Neiterkob watched from above, ensuring the flow of life remained steady and that the leather strap held firm against the shifting winds that threatened to tear the realms apart. However, every great gift comes with a shadow, and not everyone on earth looked at the sky with the same reverence and purity of heart as the young Nkai did. A neighbor, driven by a heart that had grown cold and jagged like a mountain peak after years of hardship, watched the miracle unfolding with a growing, bitter envy. This man, whose name has been lost to the dust of time as a warning, did not see a blessing for his people. He saw only a source of power that he did not yet control. He crept through the tall, whispering grass, his eyes fixed on the leather cord that continued to bring more life down from the heavens to the parched valley floor. He thought to himself that if he could control the source, he could become a god among men, ruling over the pastures with a fist of iron and hoarding the wealth of the sky. Neiterkob felt the shift in the atmosphere, the way the air grew heavy with the scent of human greed, which to a god smells like the acrid smoke before a devastating fire. The god sighed, for he knew that even the most benevolent gift would be tested by the frailties of those who received it, and that some would always seek to break what is shared. Nkai, oblivious to the growing darkness nearby, began to lead the cattle toward the fresh, flowing water of the Mara, his heart overflowing with a silent, profound gratitude. He hummed a melody that came to him in a dream, a song that calmed the beast and made them follow him with a trust that transcended the boundaries of language. Meanwhile, the envious man reached the base of the leather ladder and drew a blade made of sharpened obsidian, its edge reflecting the light of a sun that seemed to be fading. He intended to cut the cord once he had taken enough for himself, trapping the rest of the herd in the sky so that no other man could ever rival his newfound wealth. But the leather of Neiterkob was not ordinary skin. It was woven from the essence of patience, the fibers of cosmic law, and the very prayers of the ancestors yet to be born. When the blade struck the hide, it did not cut or fray. Instead, it rang out with a sound so piercing and pure that it shattered the silence. for hundreds of miles around. The envious man was thrown back by the sheer force of the vibration, his hands stinging and numb as if they had touched a hive of angry celestial bees. In the heat of summer, Neiterkob leaned forward from the clouds, his face appearing as a massive, swirling shadow against the sun, casting a sudden and terrifying darkness over the entire valley. "Why do you seek to break the bridge that I have built with love?" The god's voice boomed like an earthquake, making the very trees bow their heads in submission. The man trembled on the ground, his obsidian blade turning to fine gray dust in his grip as he realized the terrifying magnitude of his folly and the depth of his shame. And Kai turned back, seeing his neighbor cowering in the dirt, and he felt a deep, resonant sorrow for the man's soul rather than a desire for vengeance or anger. He walked back to the leather cord and knelt in the red dust, placing his forehead against the sacred hide to offer a prayer of peace for both the land and his brother. Lord Neiterkob, and Kai prayed, "Forgive the hunger of the spirit that knows no bounds, and let the gift remain as a teacher for all who walk with honor and truth." The god was deeply moved by Enkai's humility, for it was the very quality he wished to cultivate in the people of the plains, to ensure their long-term survival. Neiterkob decided that the visible bridge must eventually go, for true faith lives in the memory of the gift and the stewardship of the soul, not just the sight of the miracle. But before he withdrew the cord, he whispered a final, vital secret to Enkai about the true nature of the cattle and the responsibility of the herdsman. "They are not just meat and milk," Neiterkob murmured into the wind. "They are the clock of your days, the keepers of your peace, and the currency of your kindness." Enkai listened with his whole being, understanding that the health of his herd would always be a direct reflection of the health and integrity of his own spirit. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the Rift Valley, the last of the destined cattle stepped onto the grass, and the leather cord began to glow. Slowly, with a grace that defied gravity, Neiterkob began to pull the ribbon back toward the heavens, the sky folding in on itself like a closing night-blooming flower. The people gathered at the edge of the plains, watching in silent awe as the physical path to the gods disappeared, leaving behind a horizon of endless purple and gold. Now, Enkai stood alone with the herd, the weight of a new world and a new responsibility resting heavily but comfortably on his young, capable shoulders. The envious man, seeing the bridge gone and his blade turned to dust, realized he had lost his chance to be a tyrant and walked away into the deepening shadows. Enkai did not cast him out or name his crime to the tribe, for he knew that the gift of Neiterkob was meant to foster community and healing, not division or isolation. He shared the first milk with the thirsty, the elderly, and the tired, showing them how to treat the animals with the profound respect due to a divine guest. Word spread like a grass fire across the savanna of the man who spoke to the sky, and the gentle beasts that followed him wherever he chose to lead them. Tribes began to gather from the mountains and the forests, and Enkai taught them the ways of the shepherd, the art of moving with the seasons and the rain. He told them stories of Neiterkob, the god who gave without asking for sacrifice, and whose only requirement was the righteous stewardship of the living earth. Years passed into decades, and the cattle multiplied across the land, their lowing becoming the signature sound of the East African plains from sunrise to sunset. The very landscape changed as paths were worn deep into the red earth by millions of hooves, creating a living map of survival, migration, and prosperity. Yet, Enkai never forgot the distinct feeling of the cold, dead stone of his youth versus the living warmth of the first cow's breath. On that miraculous morning, he became a wise elder, a pillar of his people, often seen sitting under the oldest, widest baobab tree, looking up at the sky whenever the moon grew thin and silver. He would tell the children that the moon was just a remnant of the leather cord, a silver reminder that the heavens are always watching over the herds and their masters. The moral of the gift was etched into every story. Prosperity is a bridge of trust, and if you try to burn it for your own gain, you leave yourself alone in the dust. Neiterkob continued to watch from the celestial heights, occasionally sending a soft, rhythmic rain to wash the dust of the journey from the hides of his beloved creatures. He saw how the Maasai became the true guardians of the cattle, their very identity, songs, and heartbeat woven into the life and movement of the great herds. The gift was unseen in its true depth, for it wasn't just about physical survival, but about the birth of a culture that valued the sanctity of life over the greed of possession. Even when the lions roared in the dark of the night, the people felt a strange safety, for they knew Neiterkob had given them the wisdom to protect what was holy. The firelight in the bomas reflected the same ancient light that had once emanated from the celestial leather cord on the day the worlds were joined. In times of great drought, when the grass turned to brittle straw, the people would look to the distant blue mountains and remember the benevolent god's promise. They learned through the cycles of the moon that the earth provides only as much as the human heart is willing to cherish and protect for the next generation. Enkai's lineage became the keepers of the eternal flame, ensuring that the story of the unseen gift was never swallowed by the shifting desert sands of time. Every calf born in the enclosure was seen as a divine renewal of the ancient contract. Between the silent sky and the working soil of the valley, the bells around the necks of the leading bulls rang with a tone that echoed the memory of the obsidian blades striking the indestructible divine hide. This sound served as a perpetual warning against the poison of greed, and a joyful celebration of the harmony that follows a life of true devotion. The savannah thrived under this stewardship, becoming a vibrant, breathing tapestry of life where the human, the beast, and the spirit walked as one under the sun. Neiterkob's wisdom echoed in the way the young shepherds respected the smallest blade of grass, never taking more than the land could naturally replenish. They understood through Enkai's teachings that to mistreat the animal was to directly insult the god, who had lowered it down the long path of stars. As Enkai reached the end of his long and fruitful life, he called his many sons and daughters to his side as the evening fire began to crackle and pop. He did not leave them gold, land deeds, or weapons of war, but he pointed a trembling finger to the horizon where the cattle grazed in the final golden hour. "Remember the cord," he whispered with his final breaths, his voice as thin and haunting as the wind passing through the dry, autumn reeds of the river bank. "It is no longer made of leather that you can touch, but of the love you show to each other and the dignity you afford to the life that sustains you." With those words, Enkai closed his eyes for the last time, and legend says a great white bull appeared from the mist to lead his spirit back to the high pastures. The people mourned his passing with songs that lasted for 7 days, but they also celebrated, for they knew the gift of Neiterkob was now part of their blood. The legend of the unseen gift grew and traveled, moving from the white shores of the Indian Ocean to the jagged, frost-covered peaks of the Simien Mountains. In every village and every temporary camp, the name of Neiterkob became synonymous with the quiet, steady support of a father who provides for his children. The unseen gift was the ultimate realization that the greatest blessings are often those we take for granted until we look at them with the eyes of the soul. The cattle remained the beating heart of the people, a living, breathing legacy of that one pivotal moment when the sky reached down to touch the earth. Even today, when the sun sets in a blaze of fire over the Serengeti, one can almost see the faint, ghostly shimmer of a leather ribbon stretching into the clouds. It is a sign to the faithful that the bridge is still there, invisible but strong, for those who know how to look for it with a humble and grateful heart. The story of Neiterkob teaches us that we are all, in our own way, shepherds of something sacred that has been entrusted to our care by the heavens. Whether it is a tradition, a piece of land, or a simple act of kindness, we must guard it against the obsidian blades of envy that seek to sever our connections. The benevolent God asks for nothing in return but our gratitude and our willingness to share the milk of our success with those who have less than ourselves. As the stars come out to graze in the night sky, the lowing of the cattle reminds us that we are never truly alone in the vast, intimidating silence of the world. We are connected by an invisible, unbreakable thread to the source of all life, a thread that remains vibrant as long as we are faithful to our neighbors. So let us walk the vast plains of our own lives with the quiet dignity of Enkai and the boundless generosity of the one who gave us our first breath. For the gifts of the gods are never measured by their physical size or weight, but by the life and hope they bring to a hungry and waiting world. And the story of the benevolent God continues to breathe through every heartbeat of the African wilderness, from the smallest insect to the tallest giraffe. This was the unseen gift of Neiterkob, a legacy of stone, sky, and spirit that will last as long as the sun continues to rise in the glorious east. Thank you for listening to this legend of the Maasai. If this story touched your heart, please comment, like, share, and subscribe to Storycraft Studio for more.